Okay, soon.
You're live.
Welcome to the 35th Annual Toronto Socialist Action May Day celebration. We acknowledge that this event is taking place on Indigenous lands across Turtle Island known as North America. That includes the unceded territories of the Mississauga of the New Credit, the Windot, and Haudenosaunee people in the place called Toronto. Today I'm speaking to you from Jamaica, where the Indigenous Taino and Arawak-speaking people began arriving here 4,000 years ago, but were wiped out by European colonial powers. We join in the fight for justice, recognizing that there can be no real reconciliation without restitution. That entails seizing the assets of the big resource corporations and returning them to the commons. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic third wave, this is an unprecedented International Workers' Day. Around the world, millions are they should be marching, but they're marking the occasion online instead of marching in the streets. Workers are demanding proper health care, a living wage for all, an end to war, an end to destruction of the environment, no return to austerity, and a halt to big business rule. My name is Elizabeth Bice. I'm the Federal Treasurer of the NDP Socialist Caucus and a leading member of Socialist Action and your host for this evening. Currently, we are celebrating the 27th anniversary of the founding of Socialist Action in Canada. Our annual International Education Conference will be held online 4 weeks from now on Saturday, June the 5th. We warmly invite you to attend virtually. It will feature speakers from the USA, Canada, and beyond, so please don't miss it. And if you want to change the world, get directly involved in our party. We warmly welcome you to join Socialist Action. It is fitting at this time that we remember those who helped to build the socialist and working class movement through a lifetime of dedication. We want to honor the lives of some outstanding individuals who passed away within the last year or so. And tonight, SA's celebration, May Day celebration, will be dedicated to Comrade Ernie Tate. Ernie Tate was born in Belfast in 1934 and emigrated to Canada at age 21, where he soon joined the Trotskyist movement, became a leading member of the Socialist Education League, the League for Socialist Action, and then the Revolutionary Workers' League. Ernie helped to build the Fair Play for Cuba Committee, and back in Britain in the mid-60s, the Vietnam Solidarity Campaign. As a stationary engineer, Ernie joined Ontario Hydro in '77 and was vice president of CUPE Local 1 for several years. In 2014, with the help of his life partner, Jesse McKenzie, Ernie published a marvelous 2-volume memoir entitled Revolutionary Activism in the 1950s and 60s. He passed away on February the 5th from pancreatic cancer at 87 years old. Larry Nozaki, a lifetime activist and socialist, died in Vancouver on December the 5th, 2020. Born to a West Coast family of Japanese ancestry, Larry endured as a young child the Canadian government's cruel interment in 1942 of ethnic Japanese citizens. On leaving school, Larry took a job in the Postal Service, where he worked until retirement. He quickly became active in the militant CUPW. He joined the Socialist Information Center, which helped to establish the League of Socialist Action, LSA. Larry supported the Fair Pay for Cuba, participated in the movement against the Vietnam War, and defended Quebec during the 1970 War Measures Act. He also maintained his time with Socialist Action in the USA. He was always friends with them, and he remained an activist until he died. Wayne Roberts was a prominent member of the League for Socialist Action and a recognized activist, scholar, and expert in the fields of food policy and sustainability. He passed away on January 20th, 6 months after being diagnosed with leukemia at the age of 77. Catherine Mcleod, kindergarten poet, playwright, feminist, and socialist, passed away on March the 8th, International Women's Day, at the age of 73. Catherine was a founding member of the Women's Press and May Works Festivals of Art and Labor. Leo Victor Panich was a distinguished research professor of political science and a Canada Research Chair in Comparative Political Economy at York University from '85 until 2021. addition, he served as the co-editor of the Socialist Register. He was a leader of the Socialist Project. Leo died in December at the age 75 from COVID-19, shortly after being diagnosed with cancer. Tonight, we also honor the memories of countless other militants in Palestine, Kurdistan, Iran, Afghanistan, Egypt, Syria, Turkey, Haiti, Sri Lanka, Colombia, Philippines, South Africa, and many other countries who fell in struggle against imperialism and the client regimes. Please, wherever you are, observe a moment of silence in honor of all the artists, worker militants, and socialists who have left us in the past year. Remember that April 28th was the annual day of mourning for those who died due to injury on the job. So we honor also the victims' unsafe working conditions. Just a few seconds of silence. And now we're going to hear in song Y.C. Lee, who is a tenor who performs opera and art song and is part of the new Pride and Police Coalition. He will sing the Internationale in 3 languages. Over to you, Kurt.
Arriba los pobres del mundo, que quieren los esclavos sin pan, y gritemos todos unidos, viva la internacional. Removamos todas las trabas que nos impiden nuestro bien. Cambiemos el mundo de base, huyendo al imperio burgués. Agrupémonos todos en la lucha final y se alcen los pueblos por la internacional. Agrupémonos todos en la lucha final y se alcen los pueblos compradores, es la internacional. De vous les damnés de la terre, de vous les forçats de la faim, la raison pendant son cratère, c'est l'éruption de la fin. Du passé faisant table rase, vous les slaves debout, debout. Le monde va changer de base, nous ne sommes rien soyons. C'est la lutte finale, groupons-nous et demain l'internationale sera le genre humain. C'est la lutte finale, groupons-nous et demain l'internationale sera le genre humain. Arise, ye prisoners of starvation, arise, ye wretched of the earth, for justice thunders condemnation, for a better world's in a birth. No more traditions change shall bind us, arise, ye slaves, no more enthralled. The earth shall rise on new foundations, we have been not, we shall be all. 'Tis the final conflict, let each stand in its place. The international working class shall be the human race. 'Tis the final conflict, let each stand
Thank you so much, YC. Sisters and brothers, siblings, comrades, and friends, once again, welcome to the 35th Annual Toronto Socialist May Day celebration. Can you imagine, for 35 years, we have sustained this fabulous celebration. I extend a warm welcome to our friends across Canada and the United States and beyond. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce our first guest speaker. Jenny Esnard is the National Capital Region Director of the Professional Institute of the Public Service of Canada and is the current chair of its Human Rights and Diversity Committee. She works for the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission as an emergency IT specialist and serves as the co-chair of the Black Employees Network. Jenny is the Workers' Action Movement candidate for Vice President in the upcoming Canadian Labour Congress. She is running alongside Julius Arscott for President and Sandra Griffith Bonaparte for VP on the Labour Forward team. Welcome, Jenny.
Well, thank you for that wonderful introduction. And good day, brothers and sisters. I am so honored to be a part of the Labour Forward movement as the candidate for Vice President at the CLC. As Elizabeth mentioned, I work for the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, and I sat on their union executive for quite some time. Just a little bit more about me. I'm not bragging, but I'll go ahead and do it anyway. I hold a bachelor's in political science and a master's in law. I also was a member of the bar for several years before releasing my membership. I am a professional actor as well as starring in feature films and in Tony Award-winning Broadway productions. In the past 10 years, I've committed to union activism. As a public servant for over 40 years, I held a membership in 5 different unions over this time, with the last 2 as the regional director. But my passion is about equality. And it was disturbing that Black and BIPOC employees in our community have no voice in the workplace. They are constantly abused, both mentally or threatened with retribution when voicing injustices. And during this time, I had advocated for the Black employee, but our government condones this behavior. Many employers condone this behavior because they discount the injustices. They push it off. That's not what we are about. This Labour Forward movement is going to expose these injustices. I'm tired of hearing the current government issuing a statement that we stand beside our BIPOC community. Well, you know what? What have you done? You issue a letter, big deal. Let's hold them accountable. I am just fed up, but I know if I don't run, I can't bring attention to these issues. Our unrepresented workers. It took a pandemic to expose the vulnerability of these people. Reason why we still have COVID within our country is people are forced to go to work. They don't have sick leave. So they have to risk their lives to go out to work to keep that roof over their head, the power on, and to make sure there's food at the table. You know what? Talk is cheap, but action's expensive. And so I'm going to be a very expensive person. I will work tirelessly for the causes I believe in and for the Labour Forward movement. I am so honored that they asked me to run because they fall into line of all of my beliefs and the willingness to stick their heads out. We're not going to jump back in the hole or let them play whack-a-mole with us. We are going to work and we are going to fight back. Myself, Julius, and Sandra, we will work as a team. In recent years, the unions have become easy targets for politicians. What did we do? We fought back. The Conservative government ran a smear campaign against the public service, and we fought back. Enforcing our rights will garner action. We must be far more active in our mobilization. As I can see today, the dedicated individuals to this movement are here, are participating and listening and working with us. I'm standing on the shoulders of all of these people on this team, and I'm proud to be part of the labor forward movement. For me, everyone, if you speak up, you speak out. They can't push you back. And I'm willing to lead that charge. I am determined and will remain focused on achieving positive outcomes at the CLC. I take pride in being impartial, courageous, enthusiastic, and easy to approach. We need to work as one by keeping our membership informed and engaged. And we at the Labor Forward Movement haven't forgotten the frontline worker. This pandemic exposed the failures in the workforce. We must engage them and bring them into the fold at the CLC, fighting for a true living wage and permanent paid sick leave. These hard workers need a place to call home. Our healthcare members are tired. Our nurses have been abused and mistreated for years. But with the Labor Forward Movement, we will bring them all back and keep them on track. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my feelings and my thoughts with you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Zaiya El Masri. She is a Palestinian Canadian, a graduate of Concordia University in public administration and political analyst. She worked for over 10 years as a communications and training manager at a nonprofit organization specializing in social housing and integration. She was the NDP candidate in Sonic Cartierville and speaks to us from Montreal, Quebec. Welcome, Zaiya.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'd like to begin first by acknowledging that I am currently on unceded lands. The Kanien'kehá:ka Nation is recognized as the custodians of the lands and waters in which we gather today. Tiohtià:ke Montreal is historically known as a gathering place for many First Nations. The acknowledgement is made in the spirit not only to recognize, but to raise awareness on the consequences of colonialism. May 1st has always held a very special day in our household. It was one of those occasions where all Palestinians gathered at the parade and the fair, where our struggle was highlighted in its essence as a struggle built by the hard-working hands of Palestinian women and men, and where we saw firsthand how Palestinian unions have long been at the heart of the Palestinian fight for freedom, justice, and equality. Unfortunately, today, after 100 years of war, 73 years of our ongoing Nakba, our forced displacement, ethnic cleansing, 14 years of the Gaza being under an illegal siege, a global pandemic, an apartheid state, ongoing colonization, segregation, expropriation of land, and millions of refugees scattered all over the world. We have a much more grim image in front of us, which means that we still have a lot of work ahead of us. Amidst this, there are glimpses of hope here and there. For example, the resilience and resistance of the Palestinian people, as we saw last week in Jerusalem. In Sheikh Jarrah, families sent letters and they asked the international community as well to speak and to send a letter to the International Criminal Court calling for urgent investigation of their forced displacement. The fact that we are here today raising awareness on the plight of Palestinian people on May 1st, this gives us a glimpse of hope, but we need to do more. Although over here also we saw with the NDP, when the NDP convention adopted a resolution in support of sanctions against apartheid Israel, passed with the support of 85% of delegates. We need not only to continue our efforts in solidarity with the Palestinian people, but we need to step up even more. You mentioned at the outset that I was a candidate here for the Ahuntsic-Cartierville area. And it's very important for all of us to be active wherever we can, whichever union, whichever political party. I mean, I favor the NDP, but we have to be active. We have to be the voice for those who don't have a voice. And believe me, those solidarity actions that we take have an impact on Palestinians inside of Palestine and have an impact of Palestinian refugees scattered all over the world. And also, I have to mention the most recent report by Human Rights Watch, where they found that Israeli authorities are committing the crimes against humanity of apartheid and persecution. And I highly advise those who haven't done so to go and read it, because the amount of research and the first-hand reference sources that they use is extraordinary. And we have to use it, and we have to learn about what's going on inside of Palestine. Palestinian workers, women and men, are at the forefront of the struggle, and their oppression comes from so many sides. I can talk to you about Palestinian refugees. For example, in Lebanon, they aren't allowed to practice 72 areas of work. If you went outside of Lebanon, for example, on a bursary and studied to be a doctor, well, when you come back, you can't practice just because of the fact that you're a Palestinian refugee. Palestinian laborers inside the pre-1967 borders, for example, who pay dues for the Histadrut, the Israel's trade union federation. That same trade union plays a role in their exploitation. The lockdown has not led to any easing of Israel's oppressive military occupation. Vital clinics have been closed in the occupied Jerusalem, and there has been a surge in illegal settler violence, even more than before. Arbitrary arrests and house demolitions are continuing. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians from the occupied West Bank work in Israel within the Green Line. And many were given the option of losing their jobs or staying inside the occupation state. These are workers, the same workers who pay dues for the Histadrut. These dues are deducted from their salaries and intended for social benefits and trade union protections. However, those Palestinian workers' basic rights to safe working conditions has not been met, nor have any health benefits been received. Today, more than ever, international solidarity and boycott efforts are important. As I told you, Palestinians who are living inside and Palestinian refugees, they watch and they listen when we apply action and we do our work here in terms of the solidarity movement. Unions have a huge role to play. In Montreal, we held a conference 3 years ago with all of the unions here gathered to talk about what's happening over there, with international authors coming from all over, including Roger Waters, representing artists to voice what's happening, not only our concern, but our disgust towards Israeli practices of oppression against Palestinians. So again, international solidarity today is more important than ever. I would like just to end by mentioning the great Ghassan Kanafani, a Palestinian author and poet, and just a beautiful soul. In his essay he wrote in the 70s, the essay is called The 1936-39 Revolt in Palestine. He believed that the principal threat to the Palestinian national movement comprises three enemies: the local reactionary leadership, the regimes in the Arab states surrounding Palestine, and the imperialist Zionist enemy. And we have to know that what we are facing today is a movement that requires us to come together in solidarity and to fight for the rights of those who can't speak up right now. Those who are speaking up, but the world is turning a deaf ear towards the Palestinian people. Thank you.
Thank you, Zaiya. Our next speaker is Jeff Mackler. He is the National Secretary of our sister party in the United States. He is the lifeline organizer of civil rights, anti-war, and labor solidarity in the West Coast coordinator of the campaign to free Mahmoud Abu Jamal, and a steering committee member of the United National Anti-War Coalition. Jeff was the Socialist Action candidate for president of the USA in 2020. Welcome, Jeff.
Glad to be with you, Elizabeth, friends and comrades of Socialist Action Canada. On this May Day celebration, I bring you greetings from the political committee and national committee of my party, Socialist Action. We live in the United States, in the richest nation on the planet Earth. And yet the United States ranked first in the world in the number of deaths of its population. We've lost almost 600,000 people. Here you have the richest nation on earth ranking number one in the world in deaths. and ranking some 20% of all the cases of it. Here you have the most civilized nation on earth, and yet the United States ranks first in the world in the number and percentage of its people in prison and on death row, the majority people of color. We live in a racist society, which recently decided that the overt racism that the ruling class decided of the Trump administration had to be replaced with a kindler, gentler image. So the ruling class combined the billionaire rich to elect a former racist bigot president, Joseph Biden, who is now portrayed as a man of the people, a person who's receptive to Black Lives Matter, a person who opposes police brutality. And yet this was the same Biden who, during his decades of service, introduced the most reactionary legislation that led to the mass incarceration system that we have today. He partnered with President Obama to keep United States troops at war simultaneously in 7 nations. This progressive administration has the largest military budget in the world. Its $1 trillion annual allocation virtually equals the combined expenditures for the military of every nation on earth. The United States has 107 troops in 175 countries and maintains 1,100 military bases around the world. Nothing has changed under President Joseph Biden. His first act, indeed, was to send additional troops to Syria, where the US-led NATO Gulf state monarchy orchestrated war has taken the lives of 500,000 Syrians and reduced almost half the population to internal or external exile. On this May Day, I'm proud to say, we'll be mobilizing in the San Francisco Bay Area with the San Francisco Labor Council that is called, for the first time in decades, a mass demonstration starting in the Embarcadero, going up Market Street to the Civic Center, and commemorating the historic 1934 strike by the Longshore Union that closed down the city and made Northern California, at that time, a union town. There'll be contingents for the nation's leading political prisoners demanding the freedom of Mumia Abu-Jamal. We had a demonstration in Philadelphia on Mumia's birthday. This is an innocent political prisoner who is a victim of the systemic racism that permeates every institution, especially the so-called criminal justice system. In Philadelphia, we had a demonstration of almost 1,000 people on Mumia's birthday last Saturday, a week ago. We have a new face on American imperialism, the Biden face, who claims that he supports Black Lives Matter, and yet his legislation is calling for an additional $300 million for police departments around the world. We have a contradiction in this country, a giant contradiction. The same Labor Council that is having a demonstration tomorrow on May Day, if you look at its website, is replete with nothing but endorsements of the Democratic Party. The same with all of the Bay Area Labor Councils, indeed, the entire labor movement, which tragically today stands at the lowest point in the modern era. Less than 6% of private employment in the United States is unionized, with the horrible example a week or so ago of the Bessemer, Alabama workers at Amazon voting 2-1, almost 1,800 to 700 against a union because of the relative or virtual bankruptcy of the trade union movement in organizing a serious challenge to the world's 3rd largest employer and to its head, Jeff Bezos, who is today the richest person on the planet Earth. The trade union bureaucracy could muster one organizing drive at Amazon's 110 different facilities across the country. We have a tremendous amount of work. You're way in advance of us, and I'm proud to hear about your achievements in running a slate of candidates in the Canadian Labour Congress. We don't have a trade union-based Labour Party in the United States. Our trade union movement, to the extent you can call it a movement, is tied hand in glove to the Democratic Party. It was the Democrats that spent $90 million to tragically buy off the leaders of the groups that claim to be the central organizers of the Black Lives Matter movement. Here you had the largest demonstration in the history of the United States. 20 million people, majority Black, mobilizing in 2,000 US cities to demand Black Lives Matter and to oppose the systemic racism that kills an average of 3 people every day, one of them Black, unarmed people in America by police violence. Here you have a mass movement on the one hand, showing its power to fundamentally challenge the systemic racism. Within a matter of days, the statues honoring the Confederate racist slavocracy were torn down across the country. Token legislation in 30 state legislatures and 140 bills was introduced supposedly to remedy the systemic racism in American society. The Black community hasn't seen a single police force in the country defunded, not to mention demolished. That 20 million people, and I'll close on that, shows the potential of working people. It was led by Blacks, but a massive number of young white working class youth in the face of COVID last summer, deadly COVID, joined the demonstrations in a multiracial protest decrying the horrors of racism in America and militarism. Socialist Action is proud to be your sister party, comrades. We invite your leaders to join us in our meetings every 2 weeks, our political committee meetings. We share a common program. And by the way, I was so proud.
30 seconds.
I was so proud to hear your last speaker identifying with our view, and that is for a democratic, secular Palestine, as opposed to the Zionist colonial settler apartheid state of Israel today. We share a common heritage in revolutionary politics. I urge all your friends to join Socialist Action, and I look forward to visiting you as soon as COVID conditions allow and resume our direct solidarity. Revolutionary greetings from Socialist Action USA, comrades. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here, Jeff. Thanks so much. Okay, folks, now we're in for a treat. We're going to be listening to Hacha, Beverly Kreller, and Howard Druckman. Their music, which evokes the Great Depression in rustic, rural songs of work and faith, delivered with a vintage vibe and the energy of a runaway train. Hacha creates a distinctive musical blend of old-time Western, bluegrass, early swing, and country gospel. Here at Workers' Day celebration, May Day celebration for the second time, please welcome Hacha.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We're nice to see you all.
We're very honored to be invited to perform at the Socialist Action's May Day, and we're so happy to be doing it a second time. We obviously respect and appreciate the fact that Socialist Action is fighting a good fight for the right things and the right reasons. And as I say, we're just honored to be involved at all and to provide a little comfort, a little music. So we're going to start with a song about coal mining, and not that we support coal mining, but it's a song of people who work in the coal mines and the work that they do and how precarious and how dangerous and how frightening it absolutely can be. It's an old Carter family song, and it's called Coal Black Blues, and it goes like this. 1, 2, 3, 4.
shoes. Blues and more blues since I call back blues. Blues and more blues since I call back blues. Got coal in my hair, got coal in my shoes. These blues are so blues, they are called back blues. These blues are so blues, they are called back blues. From my place looking in, my life I will lose. You say they are blues, these old matters blues. You say they are blues, these old matters blues. Now I must have sharpened these sticks that I use. I'm out with these blues, dirty cold black blues. I'm out with these blues, dirty cold black blues. We'll lay off tomorrow with these coal miners blues.
Yay!
Hey.
Thank you. We have one other song to do.
We'll make it short. All
We'll
our
make it
songs are
short.
pretty short.
All our songs are short.
This next one is a Woody Guthrie tune, and we thought it was appropriate because there's so much homelessness in the world right now, and some of you might know actually, or might have seen us on the CBC The National last year about this time, where we were invited to talk about our long-time battle with our landlord, Achilles. And they've been creating problems all over the world, in fact. And we considered a little bit of a win because the United Nations called them out because of their abuses of human rights. So we were really thrilled about that, and it actually changed some things for us around here. And I don't know how long it's going to last, and also some of it might be because of the pandemic, but certainly they've calmed everything down for us here, which is pretty good. But there's still a lot of homelessness in the world, and especially in Ontario and Toronto. There's no housing for anybody because everything's gone skyrocket high. So it's a very difficult situation we're all in, and I hope that something can change in that area too. Anyway, this song is called...
The song is called I Ain't Got No Home, and it was written by Woody Guthrie, and sadly, it's just as applicable today as it was when he wrote it back then. Almost, gosh, it's going on like 90 years ago.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there, anyway. Okay, so this is called I Ain't Got No Home. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. I ain't got no home, I'm just rolling around. Just a wandering worker, I roam from town to town. The police make it hard wherever I may go, and I ain't got no home in this world anymore. My brothers and my sisters are stranded on this road, a hot and dusty road that 1,000,000 feet have trod. Rich man took my home and drove me from my door. Yeah, I ain't got no home in this world anymore.
farming on the shares, and always I was poor. Our crops are laid into the banker's store. My wife slipped down and died, and now the cotton floor. And I ain't got no home in this world anymore. Now as I look around, it's mighty plain to see this world is such a great and a funny place to be. Oh, the gambling man is rich and the working man is poor, and I ain't got no home in this world anymore. And I ain't got no home in this world anymore.
Okay, thank you, Hotcha.
Thank you
Great
so much.
Thank you so much.
Great work.
Happy May Day, everybody.
Happy May Day to you. All righty, our next speaker is Florencia Shade. She's a new member of the British Columbia branch of Socialist Action. She is speaking to us from Wet'suwet'en Indigenous Territories in a place called Burnts Lake in the northwestern central interior of BC. Welcome, Comrade Flo.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for having me. I'm new to Socialist Action and to revolutionary organizing in general, so all I can do is speak from my personal perspective, and I hope that's enough. I'm speaking to you from the traditional lands of the Wet'suwet'en peoples. Here at the shores of Untitled Lake, we live within Gilsayu or Big Frog Clan territory under the Wet'suwet'en or Thin House. We're about an hour southwest of Burns Lake, BC, on what's currently a Skintyee Reserve. I myself am not Wet'suwet'en. I'm actually a first-generation Canadian, as my parents were immigrants from Germany and Peru. And though I am of South American Indigenous heritage, I've never been connected to that culture due to the early postpartum death of my great-grandmother. I have, however, had the fortune of falling in love with someone who calls this community home. And starting a family together has been a wildly beautiful and very eye-opening experience, as we've had to navigate the expectations, feelings, histories, and realities thrown together in the midst of so many worlds colliding. It's been sometimes messy, sometimes painful, but always instructive. And throughout it all, I've been struck by the warmth and openness shown to me by my extended family and the local community. I'm happy to say we're working on a few things to further the causes of economic justice and Indigenous rights within this little corner of the world, where I hope to play a supportive role as best I can. A prevailing theme in my life, which I suspect may go for a few here as well, seems to be that I'm a perpetual misfit. At times, I've lamented my apparent nonconformist nature, but I've learned to embrace it for what it is. This is how I'm approaching you today. As a very new member to Socialist Action, and a somewhat confused, at this point still non-denominational anti-capitalist, I have little in the way of relevant credentials. I'm just an ordinary person who's been many things to many people in many different times and places. This feeling of being on the outs is, I think, especially easy when your values don't allow you to uncritically enjoy the constant onslaught of capitalist propaganda that informs so much of our mainstream culture. So it's been such a pleasure getting to know a community of folks committed to dismantling the various systems of oppression that we live under. We are not alone. That said, nobody really fits into one neat little box. Some of us less so than others. And what I have learned is that quite simply, it takes all sorts to make the world go round and certainly to make a revolution. It's in this expansive spirit of inclusivity, compassionate curiosity, and respect for all of the diverse intersections of experience, identity, and association that I hope to contribute to the work of Socialist Action. So I appreciate the commitment of SA in supporting the self-determination of Indigenous peoples and fighting for reconciliation through restitution, which includes seizing the assets of capitalists and returning them to the people. As we move forward together into the uncertain future, we would do well to remind ourselves what binds us all together. A critical stance towards the status quo structures that perpetuate our oppression and reproduce our exploitation. An unceasing desire to see people everywhere thrive rather than simply struggle to survive. And a hopeful vision for a more just world order that is not based simply on extraction and ownership, but on the self-sovereign realization of human potential and the flourishing of all life on Earth. As eco-socialists, SA understands that Indigenous community leadership, freed from the paternalistic interests of the colonial state or the settler public, will play a vital role in a just transition to a sustainable future. It can be tempting to view the differences with those around us as reasons to diverge, contract, or abandon the struggle. But the notion of being united itself presupposes a diversity of discrete elements aligned together, taking shape only by relation to each unique other, like the stars, forming a constellation in the night sky. The universal effort to break chains invokes us all to come together, not as one, but as many, in the common cause of liberation. To that end, I believe we should continue to expand our horizons and challenge ourselves on what it means to be a part of the working class movement, whether employed or unemployed, unionized or unorganized, settler or indigenous. A revolutionary socialist understands that a high tide raises all boats. The way to build a mass movement is to make sure everyone knows that nobody will be left behind on the way to this better future. Collateral damage and the self-serving disregard for the prosperity of others is a quality of the exclusionary capitalism we are seeking to overturn, and not the egalitarian socialism we want to build. So with all of that in mind, comrades, I so look forward to the next exciting chapter of bringing this organization to life. Long live SA!
Thank you, comrade. Now, Mr. Federal Secretary, you have to follow that. So our next speaker is Barry Weisleiter. He brings together labor unionism, independent working class political action, and a revolutionary socialist politics. For 20 years, he was the president of the Toronto Substitute Teachers. He is a former Ontario Public Service Employees Union Executive Board member, and he is chair of the NDP Socialist Caucus. He is a co-editor of SA newspaper, Turn Left magazine, and of course, the Federal Secretary of Socialist Action. Please welcome Comrade Barry Weisleiter.
Good evening. Good evening, comrades and friends. What a fine event this is. By contrast, presently, the working class is living through a stunning health crisis that has cost millions of lives. Its source is clear. COVID-19 springs from the bowels of the capitalist mode of production. Toxic, highly concentrated agribusiness practices put profit before public safety. Giant corporations deforest the earth, rob it of nutrients, and pour poison into the soil, water, and air. Diseases pass between species due to their unnatural proximity. Debt, waste, and inequality already destined the world for a great recession in 2019. The coronavirus pandemic made things much worse, plunging humanity into a global depression. Overnight, production declined by 30%. Unemployment tripled. Bourgeois politicians claim to care, while they buy oil pipelines, trample indigenous people, and sell weapons of mass destruction. Inequality surges. Demagogues stoke fears. They intensify racism, sexism, and homophobia. They promote authoritarian rule and wage wars of imperial plunder. Human civilization is truly at risk. The choice is plain: socialism or barbarism. If we are to survive, revolutionary change is urgent. Vital to the change we need is international working class solidarity. International Workers' Day was born in 1888, arising from the struggle for the 8-hour day. It celebrated the Paris Commune. Later, it defended the Russian Revolution, the struggle against fascism, and subsequent triumphs of the working class in China, Vietnam, and Cuba. On this day, we stand in solidarity with the Palestinian people for the boycott, divestment, and sanctions against the Zionist apartheid state, and with Venezuela against imperialist intervention. We condemn the criminal blockade imposed by Ottawa, Washington, and the European Union. They target countries for regime change when they stand in the way of imperial super profits. More than ever, it is clear that capitalism is a dying system that threatens to destroy nature and humanity. What is it when capitalist governments cut funding to public health services and medical research? When they fail to provide protective gear? When they limit the staff at for-profit long-term care centers to part-time hours, low pay, and no benefits? when they deny workers automatic and adequate paid sick leave, when they close borders to starving millions displaced by wars and climate change caused by the G7. Plainly, it is murder, mass murder rooted in the capitalist profit system. But there is an alternative to this genocidal system, a rational, democratic, humanistic, and cooperative alternative: socialism. To achieve socialism, it is vital to advance concrete transitional demands to increase the confidence and capacity of the working class to achieve change and to win power. Socialist action demands basic income for all. Every adult, regardless their immigration status, deserves a decent living wage with no cuts to special social programs and no privatization of public services. No one should have to buy their health care or medications. Nationalize Big Pharma, put all long-term care facilities into public ownership, release prisoners convicted of nonviolent crimes. Put a moratorium on residential rents and mortgage payments. No evictions. No cutoff of heat, electricity, water, or internet service. Expropriate the big landlords. Build quality social housing on a mass scale. We can follow the example of Venezuela. Freedom of communication, especially vital at a time like this, means putting an end to bandwidth limits, long-distance phone fees, restricted minutes, and exclusionary paywalls. We say nationalize the telecoms. Tax the rich, expropriate the big banks, the giant oil and gas corporations, seize dead capital sitting idle in offshore and domestic bank accounts. Use these resources to combat COVID, to produce vaccines against it, and to encourage farmers to grow healthy food. Reduce credit card interest rates to zero. Outlaw payday loan sharks. Transition away from fossil fuels and nuclear fission. Move rapidly to green, sustainable energy systems under public ownership and workers' control. The federal liberals, who claim to be feminist, propose a measly $30 billion over 5 years for childcare, contingent on provincial cooperation. Meanwhile, Trudeau pledges $95 billion for warships and fighter jets to service US-led war missions. We say cut the military budget, defund, disarm, and disband the police. Under the present mode of production, it's capitalism for the poor and socialism for the rich. That must be replaced by a cooperative commonwealth, a genuine economic democracy, a goal the rich and powerful will resist tooth and nail. Only a socialist revolution led by a mass revolutionary workers' party deeply rooted in the majority class can crash the barriers erected by the ruling rich. Only in that way can we release the full potential of humanity in harmony with nature. Canada is a playground for the super rich. Since March 2020, Canada's billionaires have collectively increased their wealth by more than $78 billion, a 40% jump in a single year. For them, COVID-19 has been a boon, not a crisis. I'm talking about 4 dozen billionaire families, led by the likes of David Thomason, David Cheriton, Jim Pattison, Joseph Tsai, Galen Weston, and James Irving. In 2016, the richest 1% of Canadians owned more than a quarter of the country's total wealth. Did you know that Canada is the only country in the G7 without an inheritance tax? But to be honest, it's quite unlikely that any tax will end such glaring inequality. The situation demands expropriation of the super rich to meet the emergency needs of the vast majority. The fight to win eco-socialist policies takes place on many fronts, including in the unions and in the NDP. Inside the workers' movement, we face agents of the bourgeoisie. We face the labor lieutenants of capital, the union and NDP bureaucrats who collaborate with the bosses, who vote for cutbacks, who vote for military spending, who condone sanctions against Venezuela and Cuba, and prop up the rotten capitalist system. They put their personal careers ahead of the interests of the working class as a whole. Pro-business bureaucrats must be replaced by class-conscious workers. How will workers develop class consciousness? Only in the fight against the bosses and in the fight against the agents of the bosses. That is why socialist action is engaged in struggles inside the mass working class organizations. Few groups that claim to be socialist do that. Most stand on the sidelines, talking to themselves. For Socialist Action, building a disciplined working class party inside our class is the heart of our strategy for revolutionary change. So we fight for socialist policies, and we run candidates for executive office in unions and the NDP. When the Postal Workers Union began rotating strikes in the fall of 2018 to win pay equity and postal banking, Justin Trudeau ordered an end to it. Well, Socialist Action helped to organize mass solidarity pickets that shut some major postal plants. That's when the ranks of labor should have been unleashed on the lying liberals. When General Motors, which got billions from Ottawa, announced it would close the plants in Oshawa, Unifor should have spurred auto workers to occupy and demand expropriation of GM. When Thug Ford cut health services, when he increased school class size, when he slashed legal aid, when he canceled paid sick leave and dumped environmental protection, it was time to dump Thug Ford with a general strike. When community service workers at Tropicana in Scarborough struck against rollbacks, SA rallied supporters. When brewery workers were locked out by Molson Coors for resisting concessions, SA members joined their picket lines. Just 3 weeks ago, with our allies in the Socialist Caucus at a very undemocratic New Democratic Party federal convention, we won the party to the fight for $20 an hour minimum wage. We won the party to demand an end to arms sales with Israel, to stop trade with illegal settlements in occupied Palestine, and we elected several socialists to the leading bodies. Today, as dock workers in the Port of Montreal strike against life-destroying work shifts imposed by the bosses, we say defend the right to strike. Victory to CUPE Local 375. With our allies in the Workers' Action Movement, in 2019, we ran candidates for president and vice president of the Ontario Federation of Labour on a general strike platform, and we got 36% of the votes cast by the delegates. Today, with our allies in the Workers' Action Movement, we are running candidates for the top positions in the Canadian Labour Congress, as you heard. Let's put the movement back into the labor movement. In honor of May Day, I ask you now to raise your hand, right now, and join me in making this pledge. We will build a class struggle left wing that will shatter bureaucratic control of the unions and the NDP. We will fight imperialism. We will get Chrystia Freeland's bloody hands off Venezuela. We will boycott Israeli apartheid and defend freedom of speech. We will campaign to expropriate the natural resource pirates. There will be no reconciliation without restitution to Indigenous people. We will fight to win. The enemy is capitalism. Our banner is the World Socialist Revolution. Thank you for your attention. Join Socialist Action.
Thank you so much, Barry. Thank you very much. Okay, so now we're going to go back and hear some music. Emily Stairs is a leading member of Socialist Action Canada based in Guelph, Ontario. She helped to organize a union for teaching assistants at Wilfrid Laurier University in Waterloo, and now sings in the community and works as a music teacher. So I do believe Emily is going to sing Union Mate. You're on, Emily.
I sure am. Hello, everyone. It's so nice to see you all this evening. And I'm joining you from the unceded territory of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Attawandaron peoples, also known as the Neutral peoples, known as Guelph, Ontario, which is now home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island. And as Elizabeth said, I will be singing Union Maid, and I invite you all where you are to join in on the chorus. Even if you don't know it, you'll pick it up pretty fast, and I'll be singing it 4 times, so you have plenty of chances. Give me a second here. All right. Now there once was a Union Maid. She never was afraid of the goons and the ginks and the company finks and the deputy sheriffs who made the raids. She went to the Union Hall, where meeting it was called, and when the boys would come to her, oh, this is what they'd say: oh, you can't scare me, I'm sticking to the Union, I'm sticking to the Union, I'm sticking to the Union. Oh, you can't scare me. I'm sticking to the union. I'm sticking to the union till the day I die. Now this union maid was wise to the tricks of the company spies. She'd take you there, she didn't care. She'd always organize the guys, and she always got her way. When she asked for better pay, she'd show her card to the National Guard. Honey, this is what she'd say. Oh, you can't scare me. I'm sticking to the union. I'm sticking to the union. Oh, you can't scare me. I'm sticking to the union. I'm sticking to the union till the day I die. Now you women who wanna be free, just take a tip from me. Join hands with a union friend into the 21st century. As Angela Davis found, we're all together bound. Let race and class and gender join to stand our common ground. Oh, you can't scare me. I'm sticking to the union. I'm sticking to the union. I'm sticking to the union. Oh, you can't scare me. I'm sticking to the union. I'm sticking to the union till the day I die. One more time. Oh, you can't scare me. I'm sticking to the union. I'm sticking to the union. I'm sticking to the union. Oh, you can't scare me. I'm sticking to the union. I'm sticking to the union till the day I die.
Yeah.
Thank you, comrades. Happy May
Okay.
Day all.
Thank you. And now we're still going to have more music. Up next is Glenn Armblast. We are delighted to have with us folk singer on the social justice scene. You will encounter Glenn Armblast at demonstrations and fundraising events for good causes. Glenn has been a mainstay at this event, our May Days, both behind the scenes and on stage. He is a federal public service worker, a great brother and comrade. And one of his wonderful CDs is called Once in a Blue Moon. I'm sure he has others. Please welcome Glenn Hornblast.
Hello there, everybody. How you doing? I hope it's bright enough in this room to see me.
Yes, it's great.
And thank you so much, Elizabeth and Barry, for organizing this, and all the other people that are involved, because it's so important. Because what you're fighting for, working people, you're fighting for justice, and that's what this song is about. This is called. I'm just going to do one because it's a bit of a long song, and it's about homeless people. And for so many years, I've written songs about homeless people, and the situation has never changed. It's still as bad off or worse for them. And of course, this pandemic is so terrible for homeless people. So this is called Homeless. Danny was Ojibwe, he was born in the Sioux, but the government stole him from his home to a residential school, and they tried to make him like the white man. To speak his language was a sin. Now he's just a face on a subway grate, not the man he could have been. And now he's homeless, homeless, homeless. Now he's homeless, homeless, homeless. Lisa was a rich girl. She went to the finest schools. When her parents' marriage fell apart, she got into drugs and booze, and lost in her inner darkness, Lisa tried to take her life, then she ran away. She's still running today, looking for the light. Now she's homeless, homeless, homeless. Now she's homeless, homeless, homeless. Jimmy served his country back in the Korean War. And when he came home, his wife was gone, and his job, it was no more. So he traded in his sanity for a half-empty bottle of scotch. Now he tends to dwell in his private hell in an underground garage. And now he's homeless, homeless, homeless. Now he's homeless, homeless, homeless. Susie was a problem child. Her parents couldn't cope, so they took her to doctors everywhere, but they finally gave up hope. After years in an institution, Susie finally was released. Now she's still a child in a grown-up world, living on the street. And now she's homeless, homeless, homeless. 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 Happy May Day, everybody.
Happy May Day. Happy May Day to you, Glenn. As usual, a beautiful, beautiful song. Okay, so our next speaker is Hannah Leaknig. She's a student and a queer rights activist. She is the secretary of the Montreal branch of Socialist Action League for Action Socialist. Since Anna observes the Jewish Sabbath, here is a recorded message from her. Mr. Producer?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Hannah of Socialist Action Montreal. My apologies for not being able to attend live. I would have loved to have been here. Following the great struggle in Chicago for the 8-hour workday, the 1889 Second International declared May 1st a day of international working class unity and solidarity behind the banner of socialism. In Canada, including in Quebec, May Day's association with working class militancy and with socialism was anathema to the conservative and liberal parties, the press, and the Catholic Church. With help from the top union officials, they tried to suppress May Day in favor of an apolitical alternative, familiar to us as Labor Day, the first Monday of September. Nevertheless, militant labor activists and socialists would not be deterred. Close to 1,000 marched on the 1st of May 1906 in Montreal behind the red flag and under the slogan, "Workers of the World Unite." Speeches were heard in English, French, Russian, and Italian. The following year, the demonstration was attacked by police on Champ de Mars, but annual May Day celebrations continued and spread across Canada. The tradition was, of course, strengthened after the 1917 Russian Revolution and the formation of the Canadian Communist Party in 1921. Turnout was greater where socialist organizations were stronger and where there were concentrations of immigrant workers and strong unions. After World War II, the Cold War anti-communist crusade dampened enthusiasm for May Day.
Comrade producer, are we having a technical problem?
Organized by the Common Front of Public Sector Unions. The strike even reached. Good evening, everyone. My name is Hannah of Socialist Action Montreal. My apologies for not being able to attend live. I would have loved to have been here. Following the great struggle in Chicago for the 8-hour workday, the 1889 Second International declared May 1st a day of international working class unity and solidarity behind the banner of socialism. In Canada, including in Quebec, May Day's association with working class militancy and with socialism was anathema to the Conservative and Liberal parties, the press, and the Catholic Church. With help from the top union officials, they tried to suppress May Day in favor of an apolitical alternative, familiar to us as Labor Day, the first Monday of September. Nevertheless, militant labor activists and socialists would not be deterred. Close to 1,000 marched on the 1st of May 1906 in Montreal behind the red flag and under the slogan, "Workers of the World Unite." Speeches were heard in English, French, Russian, and Italian. The following year, the demonstration was attacked by police on Champ de Mars, but annual May Day celebrations continued and spread across Canada. The tradition was, of course, strengthened after the 1917 Russian Revolution and the formation of the Canadian Communist Party in 1921. The turnout was greater where socialist organizations were stronger and where there were concentrations of immigrant workers and strong unions. After World War II, the Cold War anti-communist crusade dampened enthusiasm for May Day, and participation fell. But the tradition received a powerful boost from Quebec with the working class and popular upsurge that accompanied the Quiet Revolution. In 1972, tens of thousands of Quebecer workers went on strike organized by the Common Front of Public Sector Unions. The strike even reached a semi-insurrectionary stage in a few communities. May 1st mobilizations have continued in Quebec ever since, with greater or lesser participation, depending on the tempo of the class struggle. Today, the torch has been taken up by a younger generation. Even without the full weight of the unions behind it, May Day can still mobilize thousands of participants in the streets of Montreal and other Quebec cities. May Day continues to produce a strong echo in the Quebec working class and its allies. Quebec stands out for adopting May 1st, and not the first Monday in September as the day to celebrate labor solidarity. In this and in other respects, it has taken the lead from the workers' movement in Europe, Africa, Asia, and Latin America. But English-speaking North America is set to have its own revival of May Day. Everywhere, young people confront a system in crisis. May Day registers the powerful sentiment for solidarity against the exploiting class, which is on the rise across the globe. There is a growing conviction that the expropriators must be expropriated. Power must shift decisively to the working class if the problems that humanity faces are to be resolved. Long live international working class solidarity. Vive le 1er mai et le drapeau rouge.
Thank you so much, Comrade Hannah. Our next speaker is John Clark. John was born in England, moved with his family to London, Ontario, where he got involved in organizing unemployed workers. Later in Toronto, became a leading figure of the Ontario Coalition Against Poverty, OCAP. He retired as its provincial organizer in January 2019. John took on the post of Packer Visitor in Social Justice in the Faculty of Liberal Arts and Professional Studies at York University. The position has recently been extended. It's nice to see public tax dollars going to such a good purpose. Welcome, John.
Thank you so much. And thank you, comrades, and happy May Day. Over the years, when I've thought about the significance of May Day, one of the recurring ideas that's always come to me is the fact that those who engaged in the struggle in Chicago, out of which May Day came, the Haymarket Martyrs, they were people who were driven by a very definite and a militant anti-capitalist politics. They wanted the elimination of the capitalist system, but at the same time, they were thoroughly rooted in the most practical day-to-day struggles of working class people. And precisely because the struggle, the attainment of socialism will come out of working class struggle. But it seems to me that we are at a point now when that kind of revolutionary politics is at an absolute premium. We are dealing with an enormous crisis within capitalism, a multifaceted crisis that is impacting the lives of people, working class people across this globe, and must be responded to in ways that meet the needs of that crisis and meet the needs of working class people and their communities. And so we need to understand, I think, that right now, in the midst of this awful pandemic, and Barry pointed out very accurately how this pandemic is itself a product of the capitalist system, it would be a big mistake to think that it has played out. In India right now, the horror that is unfolding, awful as it is for the over 1 billion people in India, its implications in terms of the creation of variants and the spreading further of the pandemic has the most incredible implications. We are, in any event, by the United Nations' own reckoning, now living in the era of pandemics. And so that biomedical crisis is going to continue to play out in one form or another. And right here in Ontario, we are in the midst of a third wave that was entirely preventable, but entirely foreseeable, and that has been unleashed on people and creating incredible suffering quite needlessly because those lives have been sacrificed for profits. And in the midst of that, the struggles that are being taken up are of enormous importance. The demand for paid sick leave, for paid sick days, has been put forward insistently and corresponds to the pressing and immediate needs of enormous numbers of working class people. The struggle against evictions that is being taken up is really, I don't think it's hyperbole to say, an heroic struggle. People in poor, racialized communities are fighting back against the threat of evictions in ways that are really, really important. But there is a desperate need to find organizational forms that can unite and generalize those struggles and that can sustain them and build upon them. And in that regard, the situation is very, very serious at the moment. The Ford government is a wretched, stumbling government of crisis. And yet the passivity amongst the trade union leadership at the present time is absolutely appalling. I could point to the outrageous collaborationist statements that OPSU President Smokey Thomas made, but to single him out in some ways would be an inaccuracy, because his particular rottenness is only an extreme manifestation of a general malaise. So we are in a situation where the need to fight back is enormous. And I don't think we can buy in for a moment to the notion put forward by supporters of Joe Biden that we are on the threshold of an era of social peace and rising working class living standards and a golden age of Keynesianism. I think the reverse is the case. Under these desperate conditions, certainly neoliberal orthodoxy has gone out the window. But I don't think we're in for a period of social compromise and social peace. I think we're in for a period in which every effort is going to be made to make working class people pay for the crisis that we are in. And over it all hangs this vast ecological crisis playing out in people's lives in ways that are enormously dramatic. And we're going to have to develop forms of organization and struggle that correspond to that multifaceted crisis. And so the advancing of a clear anti-capitalist perspective is absolutely at a premium. But to root that in the day-to-day struggles of working class people, to put forward bold fighting demands, to take militant action, and to invest that whole struggle with a clear perspective of socialist politics, of challenging the capitalist system itself, is at an enormous premium. We are in a period of incredible crisis. There are enormous dangers. There are great opportunities. The need to move forward and challenge capitalism decisively is particularly critical at this May Day. And so in the traditions of May Day, I think we need to look forward to such a struggle in the years ahead. And long live May Day. Thank you very much, comrades.
Thank you, John. Thank you so much. Okay, so now we're back to music. Sandra Griffith Bonaparte immigrated in 1988 to Canada from Grenada in the Southeast Caribbean. For 12 years, she has been president of Local 70607 of the Union of National Defence Employees, a component of the Public Service Alliance of Canada. Sandra, a member of Socialist Action, is also the Workers' Action Movement candidate for vice president in the upcoming Canadian Labour Congress. And tonight, she will be singing Trotting on a Wine Press by Bob Marley.
It's all there in Babylon System by Bob Marley. The song condemns the uncompensated labor that was slavery. It demands repayment and reparation. It includes the metaphor of the wine press drawn from the book of Revelation. And Bob Marley said, Babylon System is a vampire and it's built on slavery. So as Elizabeth said, I'm going to sing that song for you. Just a little introduction here. We refuse to be what you wanted us to be. We are what we are. That's the way it's going to be. If you don't know, you can't educate I for no equal opportunity. Talking about my freedom, talking about my freedom. People, freedom, and liberty. Yeah, we've been trotting on a wine press, much too long, rebel. Yes, we've been taking for granted, much too long, rebel. Babylon system is a vampire, falling vampire, sucking the children day by day. Yeah, me say, the Babylon system is a vampire, falling vampire, sucking the blood of the sufferers. Yeah. Building church and universities. Deceiving the children continually. Yeah. Me say, them graduating thieves and murderers. Look out now, they're sucking the blood of the sufferers. Yeah. Tell the children the truth. Tell the children the truth right now. Come on and tell the children the truth. Tell the children the truth. Tell the children the truth. Tell the children the truth right now. Come on and tell the children the truth. 'Cause we've been trodden on a wine press much too long. Rebel. We've been taking for granted much too long. Rebel. We've been trodden on a wine press much too long. Rebel. You got to rebel. We've been taking for granted much too long. Rebel. We've been trodden on a wine press much too long. Rebel. You got to rebel. From the very first day we left the shores of our father's land. Rebel, oh, rebel, yeah.
Thank you so much, Sandra. It was beautiful, just beautiful. Our next speaker is Durga Prout. She was the NDP candidate in London North Centre. She is a member of Socialist Caucus Steering Committee and was elected to the NDP Federal Executive in February 2018 as chair of the Women's Commission. She is a geotechnical engineer and is a leader of Spelling Bee Canada in London. So let's give a warm welcome to Durga.
Hi, thank you very much. Good day, lovely viewers, and happy May Day. I acknowledge that the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Lenape, and Attawandaran peoples, whose traditional lands I live on, and I'm speaking to you from as well. So good day, lovely viewers. And, I wish to thank the organizers for once again commemorating the contributions of the labor movement and workers worldwide. I look forward to the day when I could have warm conversations with familiar new faces, shoulder to shoulder in the Free Times Cafe. There has been much discussion in some quarters about the loss of freedom due to restrictions imposed by governments as a tool to curb the pandemic. But overwhelmingly, the most vocal are never people whose mere existence is over-policed. Never those who are marginalized due to simply being indigenous, racialized, non-binary, or female. And never those whose labor and human rights have been stolen away by false promises and greed. Today, I want to briefly talk about people who toil in the shadows, the forgotten ones, migrant workers who need status for all, modern-day slaves who seek emancipation, and sex workers whose health and safety would be improved if they had input into the laws that govern or affect their work. 60,000 migrant farm workers, the population of a good-sized small town, come to Canada each year. Most come from the Caribbean and Central America. Migrant workers make up about 20% of our $68.8 billion agricultural sector. In my view, this makes them essential workers. Often described as low-skilled workers, many migrant workers are actually very skilled farmers. It is not right that these workers pay taxes and into social services like EI and OHIP and are blocked by their employers and even governments from assessing them. Migrant workers, such as farm workers or caregivers, discharge their duties faithfully. However, except for a limited amount of caregivers, are generally denied a pathway to permanent residence or citizenship. Migrant workers are often subject to employer abuses, an exploitative condition that continues unabated since Canada does a woefully inadequate job of monitoring workplaces. This situation is so bad that some temporary foreign workers fall victim to slavery, including human trafficking. As a descendant of enslaved Africans, it troubles me that this scourge still exists on the earth. The Global Slavery Index estimated that in 2016, an estimated 17,000 people lived in conditions of modern slavery in Canada. Modern slavery takes several forms and includes human trafficking, forced labor, debt bondage or bonded labor, descent-based slavery, child slavery, and forced early marriages. Some migrant workers become trapped in work without pay, and others do uncompensated work outside the employment contract or are subject to wage theft in the form of food or accommodation fees. Indigenous women and girls make up only 4% of Canada's female population, yet they are 50% of the 50% of trafficking victims. Considering the important role that women play in Indigenous culture, human trafficking takes a great toll on their communities. Currently, on Parliament Hill, the House of Commons Ethics Committee is debating the protection of privacy on porn sites. Dubbed the Pornhub hearings, sex workers have complained that the politicians can't seem to address sexual exploitation without infringing on the rights of sex workers whose work is consensual. The hearings are advancing without meaningful consultation with sex workers. Action Canada for Sexual Health and Rights says that sex workers must be included, quote, in policy and law reform processes. To truly ensure that health and safety of sex workers, it is vital to follow the human rights principles of participation, transparency, and accountability, which require that sex workers have a say in modernizing the laws and policies that affect them. So this May Day, let us not forget those who toil in the shadows. We must work together and diligently to ensure that their rights are upheld. Capitalist systems of exploitation and discrimination must be swiftly broken down. Bring forgotten workers into your hearts, into the light where their humanity is respected, safety provided, and labor and human rights upheld. Make sure that the slogan status for all, humans are not for sale, and sex work is work, do not ring hollow any day of the year. Thank you for listening.
Elizabeth, you're muted.
I knew I would do it at least once. Okay, thanks. Thanks, Kurt. Thank you, Durka. It was wonderful. Christopher Thomason is the interim leader of the New Democratic Party in New Brunswick. He is a leading member of Socialist Action in Atlantic Canada and of the NDP Socialist Caucus in New Brunswick, currently training to be a teacher. Welcome, Chris.
Hi, thanks for having me. Hi, friends and comrades. Chris Thompson here, coming to you from the traditional lands of the Wolastoqiyik First Nations. I'm very lucky to have my home so close to the homes of my brothers and sisters here at St. Mary's First Nations, not a 60-second walk from me. It's allowed myself to be immersed in a culture that is much more community-focused, and which, being a radical socialist, is pretty darn cool. Workers come in all stripes. At my local supermarket, owned and operated by St. Mary's First Nation, where I get groceries every week, they make a special effort to hire from the disabled community here in Fredericton. This is a community that capital-based enterprise has no interest in investing in beyond as a cheap marketing tool. Remember the days when grocery store workers had the time to offer to take your groceries to your vehicle, help you pick things out, and weren't visibly suffering from the day-to-day time stress that the business put on them to compete with never-ending sales and productivity targets? I don't. I'm only 25. At my local community-owned supermarket, people have the time to be kind. They're there to simply help people get groceries, not do what I was taught in business school, to maximize profits. Unfortunately, I fear all of that could change. You see, attached to this community-owned supermarket is a gas station, which is also owned and operated by St. Mary's First Nation. As part of a long-standing tax sharing agreement with the provincial government, the community gets to keep the majority of the tax generated at this gas station to support their community and to help the local businesses at this little strip mall location. And this supports that supermarket who otherwise struggle to compete with the monopolistic positions of the Walmarts and the superstores. In the past few weeks, our provincial government decided they were going to scrap these tax sharing agreements with no consultation or notice with the First Nations communities across New Brunswick. On the radio, if you can believe it, our premier cited super wealthy Indigenous communities creating an unfair environment for the rest of New Brunswickers. I can only imagine, if you'll let me be sarcastic for 1 second, that the Irving executives were shaking in their jackboots now that our premier has finally decided to tackle the problem of the super wealthy. The idea that this community could lose its entire support system, quite frankly, the support system that I exist in, like it, regardless of being a politician or an interim leader of a political party, I see this stuff every day. The idea that this community could lose its entire support system, that workers, including those in our local disabled community, could lose their jobs because the government just needed to take every opportunity to fight working people trying to get ahead, it makes me sick. As Socialist Action, we know this is not just a problem Indigenous people face, even though they are targeted more than the rest of us. We know it's not just a conservative government problem, even though they are the most egregious. Every single worker will continue to face systematic attacks on their livelihoods. Class warfare is real, and if you're not fighting back, all you are doing is submitting to your very wealthy overlords. This is why the work we do is important. This is why everyone who's spoken tonight is important. I've used my time at the NBNDP to build a socialist organized labor alliance, which I am proud to say has unified the vast majority of our party around a working class perspective. We've rallied time and time again against the injustices committed every day by owners and managers in the workplace. Like when QP St. John laundry workers were told to go back into work during an ongoing fire alarm before first responders had arrived on the scene. We're also drafting the kinds of policy which will help workers across this province get out from under the thumb of their oppressive ruling class. We decided to give workers that thumb by putting forward a policy at our Socialist caucus to nationalize the Irving companies. Compared to the labor rights activists who won minimum wage, job safety regulation, paid holidays, universal health care, and more, activists like us have a lot to live up to. I am sure that we can win. And if there's one critique I have of my fellow leftists, it's to be more optimistic. We can win. I didn't know the first thing about politics not 7 months ago. We put in some effort with the help of my comrades on the left, many of the people on this call tonight. We were able to elect a socialist interim leader, and we're able to change the face of a party. Now, it's not easy everywhere, and there's different struggles for each people, but I promise you, go in with a winning attitude, and you will be surprised at the results that come out. It is right to fight for this, and you can win. So what we need to do is all learn how to organize and live up to the example of those who came before us. We can build a province, a country, a world that belongs to working people, but we have to know we can do it and make that happen. We need to do more. We need to do better, and we owe it to every working person in our communities to fight for them because they damn well deserve it. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Chris. So next up is music, this special interest group, including our great friends Kevin Barrett and Rebecca Campbell. They are based in Toronto's Kensington Market. The group brings a new rhythm to songs of hope and struggle, infusing songs from civil rights, gospel, folk, and protest movements with elements of folk, blues, rock, R&B, jazz, reggae, and ska. Here is a video of one of their best. It is called Music in the Streets. Comrade producer.
music when I'm walking in the street. I hear the sound of a sweet melody. A single voice can start a revolution. I still believe in the song. Still believe the time has come. I hear the people aching to be free. I feel the power of the numbers in the street. A single voice can start a revolution. I still believe in the song. I do believe the time has come. So let me tell you now, hey, hey, raise your hands up high, raise your hands up high, hey, hey, raise your hands up high, raise your hands up high. See a soul who's doubtful and another who is afraid, measuring the gains against the things they take away. You can't tell me all that money is better than a better world. Oh no, I still believe in the song. I do believe the time has come. Let me tell you now, hey, hey, raise your hands up high, raise your hands up high, hey, hey, raise your hands up high, raise your hands up high. I hear the music when I'm walking in the street. Feel the power of a sweet melody. A single voice can start a revolution. I still believe in the song. I do believe our time has come. So let me tell you now, hey, hey, raise your hands up high, raise your hands up high, hey, hey, raise your hands up high, raise your hands up high, hey, hey, raise your hands up high, raise your hands up high, hey, hey, raise your hands up, your hands up, your hands up high.
Okay, thank you. Wasn't that wonderful? It was just great music. All right, so thanks to everyone who participated in tonight's event and all of those in our listening audience, and a special thanks to our amazing technical producer, Kurt Young in Mississauga. Tomorrow, May 1st, join Socialist Action and our labor and socialist partners in a big May Day online gathering starting at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. So check your inbox for the link. I will be one of the co-chairs there as well. Due to the pandemic, Socialist Action will be celebrating its 27th anniversary of Socialist Action by hosting an international educational conference online. It will be held on Saturday, June the 5th, a day of excellent topics, world-class speakers, and hot discussions. So please mark June 5th on your calendar. For members and for folks who asked to join, please note that the Socialist Action Convention will be online a week later on Saturday, June the 12th. For more information about Socialist Action conference forums, film nights, and study groups held throughout the year, please send your phone number and email address to us at the SA website, www.socialistaction.ca, or just give us a call at 647-986-1917. And if you liked our show, folks, please subscribe to the SA YouTube. Okay? Once again, thank you for all for being here. Have a revolutionary Red May Day. Stay safe, stay